හරිම සුළුයි.
Tonight on First at 9, this Monday, the 18th of September 2023. Sri Lanka is set to resume the construction of roads and highways, marking a turnaround in fortunes after last year's economic crisis. An anti-ragging committee has been launched with police assistance to end freshman torture. Southwest monsoons to take increased effect while certain areas are still in drought.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දිනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
This is AdaDerana First at 9, live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and a warm welcome to today's edition of AdaDerana's English News, First at 9. I'm Jonathan Benedict. Let's take a look at our top stories for this evening. The United Nations General Assembly began in New York today with the general debate scheduled to start tomorrow. The 78th session themed Rebuilding Trust and Reigniting Global Solidarity, Accelerating Action on the 2030 Agenda and its Sustainable Development Goals towards Peace, Prosperity, Progress and Sustainability for All is scheduled to take place from the 18th to the 21st of September. That was a mouthful. President Ranil Wickremesinghe, who is currently attending the summit, is scheduled to address the conference on the 21st of September. The 78th session of the United Nations General Assembly commenced today at the headquarters of the United Nations in New York. President Ranil Wickremesinghe is currently in the United States of America to participate in the conference. The general debate of this year's UNGA conference will be held from the 19th to the 26th of September. The 2023 Sustainable Development Goals Conference is scheduled to begin today. A conference on finance for development and a conference on climate change have been scheduled simultaneously on the 20th of September. Leaders from 140 countries globally will participate in this year's conference with special attention paid to the statements made by American President Joe Biden and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who will address the conference. President Ranil Wickremesinghe is scheduled to address the United Nations General Assembly on the 21st of September. Sri Lanka's Minister of Power and Energy, Kanchana Wijesekara, stated today that a meeting was held with the United Nations Resident Coordinator to Sri Lanka regarding government policy and plans for the implementation of renewable energy projects in the country. The minister further confirmed that in a meeting held with all employee unions of the state-owned Ceylon Electricity Board last week, discussions on the progress of the reforms of the electricity sector, the structure of the new proposed Electricity Act, and other policy measures of the government regarding the country's power sector were discussed. Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara met with United Nations Resident Coordinator to Sri Lanka, Marc-Andre Franche, at the Ministry of Power and Energy this morning. In an X message today, he confirmed that discussions about government policy and plans on renewable energy, electricity sector reform structure, financial assistance and green financing available for renewable energy, including a mechanism to assist low-income families to set off electricity costs, took place. Concurrently, the minister further stated that a meeting was held with representatives of 35 CEB trade unions last week to discuss the ongoing electricity sector reforms. He added that the unions were briefed on the progress of the reforms of the electricity sector, structure of the new proposed Electricity Act, transition timelines, human resource management and transfer plans. Further, employee benefits and pensions, assistance received from the development agencies, establishment of the Reform Secretariat, establishment of successor companies were also discussed. Last week, Minister Wijesekara also met with the senior management of the CEB to detail the proposed structure for the electricity sector, establishment and role of the Reform Secretariat, transition timelines, transfer plans of employees and assets, and the establishment of successor companies to take over generation, transmission and distribution of electricity. Acting Presidential Secretary Chandani Vijayawardene issued a special gazette notification under the directives of President Ranil Wickremesinghe, declaring services under three sectors as essential. Health, petroleum and electricity are the three sectors that have been identified as essential per the special gazette. Coincidentally and previously, the same set of services were announced as essential in May of this year. A special gazette notification was issued declaring services of three sectors as essential. An announcement was made by Acting Presidential Secretary Chandani Vijayawardene yesterday, following directives issued by President Ranil Wickremesinghe. Per the special gazette notification, the supply of electricity and all related services, the supply or distribution of petroleum products and fuel, and health services were declared as essential services. The Gazette was published in accordance with the powers vested with the President under Section 2 of the Essential Public Services Act No. 61 of 1979. The announcement comes months after the aforementioned services were declared essential services in an extraordinary Gazette published on the 17th of May 2023. Sri Lanka's State Minister of Higher Education, Dr. Suren Raghavan, said that a national anti-ragging committee has been established to eliminate freshman torture in universities. In a press conference held today, the minister said that there is ample evidence that political parties who have adopted violence as their principle are perpetrating acts of torture on freshmen in universities. Ragging is a topic that has occasionally been a point of discussion in Sri Lankan universities. In the past 12 months, however, 36 incidents of harassment of freshmen have been reported and 57 students have been suspended. State Minister for Higher Education Dr. Suren Raghavan, in a press briefing today at the Government Information Department, said that a national anti-ragging committee has been established to eliminate freshman torture.
මාස 8ක් පමණ කාලයක් තිස්සේ අපි කතිකා කර නවකවද විරෝධී ජාතික කමිටුවක් පිහිටෙව්වා. ජනාධිපතිතුමාගේ නියෝජිතයෙක්, අග්‍රාමාත්‍යතුමාගේ නියෝජිතයෙක්, පොලිස් අධිපතිතුමාගේ නියෝජිතයෙක්, විශ්වවිද්‍යාල ප්‍රතිපාදන කොමිසම් සභාව නියෝජිතයෙක්, උපකුලපතිවරුන්ගේ සංගමයේ නියෝජිතයෙක් වැනි පුළුල් වුණු බුද්ධමය සාකච්ඡාවකින් තමයි අපි මේ කමිටුව පිටුවා ගන්නට ලැබුවේ. ශ්‍රී ජාතම්පුර විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයේ ශිෂ්‍යයෙකුට ටයර් එකක් පෙරලීම නිසා ඔහුගේ ස්නායු පද්ධතිය තුවාල වෙලා තිබෙනවා. ඔහුගේ අක්කා මේ නඩුව ගෙනියනවා. පළවෙනි වතාවට 5 දෙනෙක්ගෙන් සමන්විත පරිමාධිකරණ විනිසුරු මඩුලක් උසස් අධ්‍යාපනය වලට සම්බන්ධ සියලුම අයව කැඳවලා තිබෙනවා උසාවියේ ඉදිරියට. ප්‍රචණ්ඩත්වයේ Tamanගේ මතවාද හැටියටත් පිළිගත් දේශපාලන පක්ෂ හා ක්‍රියාදරයන් මේ නවකවදය දිගටම කරන බව දැනට ඕනාට වඩා සාක්ෂි තිබෙනවා.
A separate unit within the police has been established to investigate the incidents of ragging in universities and higher education institutions, with a special telephone number now introduced for complaints. Information regarding ragging can be sent to the number 0765 453 454 through WhatsApp.
යම්කිසි කෙනෙකුට තොරතුරක් වීඩියෝ දර්ශනයක් සමග එහෙම නැත්නම් ඡායාරූපයක් සමග මේ හරහා ලබා දීමේ හැකියාව තියෙනවා. මෙම තොරතුර මෙම මධ්‍යස්ථානයට ලැබුණු විගසම අපි මේ යොමු කරනවා අපරාධ පරීක්ෂණ දෙපාර්තමේන්තුවට. 1997 අංකයටත් ඕනෑම කෙනෙකුට නවකවාදයේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් යම්කිසි තොරතුරක් තියෙනවා ලබා දීමේ හැකියාව තියෙනවා.
In weather news, following the active southwestern monsoons that have begun, heavy rainfall was experienced in certain parts of the country. The Department of Meteorology stated that heavy rainfall can be expected in parts of the country, whilst ironically, extreme drought is still continuing in several areas in the Galle and Anuradhapura districts.
Heavy rainfall was reported in several areas across the country today. Though there had been a slight reduction in the rainfall reported in several parts of the country, some parts received heavy showers with the active southwestern monsoon in full force. The Met Department said that showers or thunder showers are expected to continue at times in the western and Sabaragamu provinces as well as in the Galle and Mathura districts. Meanwhile, several spells of showers are also expected to occur in the North Central province and in the Kandy, Nuwara and Hambantota districts. According to the Met Department, showers or thunder showers can be expected in several places elsewhere over the island as the evening progresses. Fairly heavy showers above 50 mm can be expected in some areas in the western, Sabaragamu and Nuwara provinces and in the Galle, Mathura, Ampara and Batiklo districts. As such, the department has requested the general public to take adequate precautions to minimize damages caused by temporary localized strong winds and lightning during thunder showers.
Southwest monsoon condition is active over the island. Therefore, showers can be expected at times in the western, Sabaragamu and northwestern provinces and in Kandy, Nuwara, Galle and Mathura district. Also, fairly heavy showers above 50 mm can be expected at times some places in the western, Sabaragamu and provinces and also in the Galle and Mathura district. Also, thunder showers can be expected at several places, especially in the northern, north central, eastern and Uva provinces. General public kind of request to take adequate precautions to minimize the damage because of we can expect some lightning activities with thunder showers.
Consequently, the National Building Research Organisation has issued an early landslide warning. Accordingly, a Level 1 advisory was issued to the Haldumulla and Haputala Divisional Secretariat divisions in the Badulla district. Conversely, several parts of the island continue to experience drought. The Anuradhapura and Galle districts have been most impacted following the prevailing drought conditions in parts of the country. As such, no spells of showers were reported in the Palagala Divisional Secretariat division of the Anuradhapura district. Several water springs and crops in the area are reported to have dried up due to the dry weather conditions. Livelihoods of people in certain parts of the Galle district have been impacted due to the lack of water caused as a result of the drought. When reached out to for a comment, the Deputy Director of the Meteorological Department said that slight rain showers can be expected in the northern and eastern parts of the country.
There are some rain we can expect in the north central, northern and eastern provinces too, but we are not expecting much rain in that areas.
Several unidentified gunmen opened fire at Member of Parliament Uddika Premaratna last night. The MP thankfully escaped unharmed. Meanwhile, Member of Parliament Selvaraja Kajendran was also attacked yesterday as he was attending the memorial of Tilipan, a former LTTE member in Trincomalee. With that, here's a look at more news across the island in brief. A group of unidentified gunmen who arrived in a vehicle opened fire at MP Uddika Premaratna last night while he was returning to his residence in Anuradhapura. Although the car was reported damaged, the parliamentarian had escaped the situation unharmed. Meanwhile, investigations into yesterday's shooting incident have reportedly been handed over to the Criminal Investigation Department with immediate effect. Member of Parliament of the Jaffna district Selvaraja Kajendran was attacked yesterday in the Sardapura area of Trincomalee as he was participating in a motorcade in memory of Tilipan, a former LTTE member. However, 6 individuals in relation to the incident were apprehended by the police this morning. The arrestees were remanded until the 21st of September after being produced before the Trincomalee High Court today. Further investigations into the matter are yet to be launched. Meanwhile, in the Alawa Variagoda area, a 44-year-old person was beaten to death. Police investigations revealed that the attack had occurred due to a personal dispute between 2 parties. However, the suspect later surrendered before the Varakapola police. President Ranil Wickremesinghe said that Sri Lanka would have been a developed country today had the nation been able to sustain the socio-economic reforms initiated by late President J.R. Jayawardena. On his message presented on the commemoration event to mark the 117th birth anniversary of late President Jayawardena, he said neighbouring countries such as India, China and Vietnam studied late President Jayawardena's approach and prospered by adapting their policies to keep abreast with changing times. Late President J.R. Jayawardena's 117th birth anniversary commemoration was held at the Jayawardena Centre in Colombo yesterday. In his message to mark the commemoration, President Ranil Wickremesinghe said that if Sri Lanka had been able to sustain the socio-economic reforms initiated by late President Jayawardena in 1977, the nation would be a developed country today. President Wickremesinghe conveyed this sentiment while on an official visit to the United States of America to attend the 78th session of the United Nations General Assembly, which commenced today. The President's message highlighted late President J.R. Jayawardena's revolutionary impact on the nation's socio-economic landscape. He further emphasized that challenges such as riots, terrorism and a failure to fully grasp that philosophy hindered the complete success of these reforms. He also noted that neighbouring countries such as India, China and Vietnam, which transitioned from closed and socialist economic practices, studied late President Jayawardena's approach and prospered by adapting their policies to evolve with the times. Following the commencement of the birth anniversary commemoration, former Speaker Karu Jayasuriya delivered the keynote address.
එතුම පරමයෙන්ම 1977 බලයට පත් වුණ අවස්ථාවේදී පෞද්ගලිකකරණය සඳහා ජනාධිපති කොමිසමේ සමාජික වශයෙන් පත් කළා. දැන් අද අපි ඔක්කොම පෞද්ගලික ආයතන පාරු ලබන ආයතන නැවතත් ප්‍රතිසංස්කරණය කරලා තියෙන අවස්ථාවක් එතුම දැක්ක යම් අවස්ථාවක මේක සිදු කළ යුතුයි. ඒ නිසා තමයි එතුම පෞද්ගලිකකරණය පිළිබඳ ජනාධිපති කොමිසම කාරණා. නමුත් මේකේ ප්‍රයෝජන ගන්න පුළුවන් වුණේ ඊට අවුරුදු 12කට පස්සේ අද වගේ කාලයක 1989 වල විශාල විදේශ විනිමය පිළිබඳ ප්‍රශ්නයක් ආවා. ඒ ප්‍රශ්නේ ආපු අවස්ථාවේදී IMF ඉදිරිපත් වුණා රජයට අයිති රාජ්‍ය ආයතනයක් පෞද්ගලික කළ යුතුයි කියලා. ඒ ආයතනුනේ කල කමාන්තයන්ති පස්සේ කිව්ව වර්තමාන ජනාධිපතිතුමාට තිබු ආයතන පරිණතයට අවුරුදු 12කට පස්සේ ඒක සාර්ථකව ගන්න පුළුවන් වුණා. ඉතින් අද අපි ඔක්කොම පාඩු ලබන ආයතන නැවතත් සංශෝධනය කරන්න කතා.
I've got business news for you on the other side of this short break. Stay tuned.
ගොඩමඩ පෙරලි කරන බලපුළුවන්කාරයා මහින්ද්‍රා යුවෝ ඩීමෝ වෙතින්. වැඩම ගොඩයි ගොඩම තමයි. ස්වරාජ් ට්‍රැක්ටර් ඩීමෝ වෙතින්.
Welcome back. State Minister of Highways Siripala Gamlath has confirmed the government's plan to resume construction of Sri Lanka's halted road system, adding that funding will be allocated in the upcoming budget, ensuring a swift completion and delivery to the public. Meanwhile, following directives issued by President's Senior Advisor on National Security and Chief of Staff Sagala Ratnayaka, a comprehensive report to encompass a detailed assessment of the current safety conditions of all reservoirs, lakes, dams and water-carrying tunnels across the island is to be submitted within a time period of 2 weeks.
State Minister of Highways Siripala Gamlath announced the government's plan to resume the construction of Sri Lanka's halted road system, adding that funding will be allocated in the upcoming budget, ensuring swift completion and delivery to the public.
අපි දන්නා මාර්ග සංවර්ධනයේදී මාර්ග සංවර්ධන අධිකාරිය තමයි ප්‍රමුඛත්වයක් ගන්නෙ. අද මේ මාර්ග සංවර්ධන අධිකාරිය ඒගොල්ලන්ට තියෙන්නේ A ශ්‍රේණිය B ශ්‍රේණිය පාරවල්. මේකේ ප්‍රධානම අංගය තමයි පාරවල් නඩත්තු කිරීම. එතකොට මේ පාරවල් නඩත්තු කිරීමට කිලෝමීටර් 12225ක ප්‍රමාණයක් තියෙනවා. ඒ වගේම කිලෝමීටර් 312 අධිවේගී මාර්ග. ඒ වගේම පාලම් 5432ක්, ඒ වගේම ගුවන් පාලම් 12ක්, බෝට්ටු සහ පාලම් පාරු 9ක් මාර්ග සංවර්ධන අධිකාරිය විසින් වාර්ෂිකව නඩත්තු කරනවා. දැන් අපේ IMF ඒ ව්‍යාපෘතියත් එක්ක මේ මුදල් ප්‍රතිගත කිරීමත් එක්ක අපිට නැවතත් ලබන මාසෙන් පස්සේ ඒ අසංකල කිව්සුම් ක්‍රියාත්මක කරගන්න පුළුවන් වෙයි කියලා. ඒ වගේම මේ අයවැයෙන් අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා අපේ රටේ පාරවල් නඩත්තු කිරීම වගේම අලුතින් මේ වැඩසටහන් ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න. ඒ වගේම ආසියානු සංවර්ධන බැංකුවෙන් අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වුණා අර නතර වුණ වැඩ ටික ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න බිලියන 60ක මුදලක් US ඩොලර් මිලියන 60ක මුදලක්. ඒ මුදල සම්පූර්ණව දෙන්නම් කියලා මිලියන 18ක් දෙන්න පොරොන්දු වෙලා තියෙනවා මේ අවුරුද්ද අවසාන වෙන්න ඉස්සෙල්ලා. ඒතර මේ ඉදිරි මාස දෙක තුන ඇතුළත ඒ මුදල් ලැබුණාම අපි මේ නතර වෙලා දැනට පාවිච්චි කරන මේ අපි දන්නවා සම ABC දාලා නැත්නම් යම් වැඩ කොටසක් කළා යන්න බැරි තත්ත්වේ පාරවල් තියෙනවා. පාරවල් හදන්න ගිහිල්ලා තිබුණ පාරක් කඩලා නැවත හදන්න ගිහිල්ලා ඒක යන්න බැරි තත්ත්වයටපත් වුණ පාරවල් රාශියක් අපේ තියෙනවා. ඒ පාරවල් ටික අපිට අවසන් කරගන්න පුළුවන් වෙයි මේ අවුරුද්ද දැන් ඉදිරි මාසවල වගේම ඉදිරි කාලෙදී මේ සඳහා කටයුතු කරන්න පුළුවන්කම තියෙනවා.
Relevant officials were called upon to furnish a comprehensive report to encompass a detailed assessment of the current safety conditions of all reservoirs, lakes, dams and water-carrying tunnels across the island. Following directives issued by President's Senior Advisor on National Security and Chief of Staff Sagala Ratnayaka, the report is to be submitted within a span of 2 weeks. The directive was delivered during a high-level meeting which convened at the Presidential Secretariat today. It is expected to outline the necessary repair work required and to provide an estimation of associated costs. He further emphasized the urgency of this report, underlining the need for prompt action to address any potential safety concerns. The report aims to facilitate informed decision-making at the highest levels of government. During the meeting, a detailed discussion ensued regarding the technical safety aspects of reservoirs, dams and tunnels, specifically those belonging to the Irrigation Department, the Sri Lanka Mahavali Authority and the Electricity Board. Further, particular attention was given to the challenges arising from blockages in water-carrying tunnels, necessitating their restoration by removing sedimentary deposits such as sand and mud.
The Colombo Bourse closed lower today following losses in industrial and financial stocks. The Colombo Stock Exchange All-Share Price Index closed down 0.89% at 11,363.64 points, falling for the second straight session, while the S&P SL20 was down by 0.96% at 3,213.42 points. Cargill's PLC and Haley's PLC were the top losers on the CSE All-Share, retracting by 2.3% and 2.28% respectively. Trading volume on the All-Share Index fell to 26 million shares from 36.8 million shares in the previous session. Equity market turnover fell to 659.8 million rupees from 784.1 million rupees in the previous session. The materials sector was the top contributor to market turnover today, while the banking sector was the second highest contributor. Foreign investors were net buyers, purchasing stocks worth 39.8 million rupees, while domestic investors were net sellers, offloading shares worth 655.5 million rupees. Meanwhile, market researchers state that interest rate reductions expected in the coming weeks are expected to drive the markets in the coming months. Diluksha Dimel joins us now with a few thoughts to round off our Market Outlook segment for this week.
From the local equity front, we saw that the ASPI remained relatively stable at around 11,465. It ended the week at 11,465. Meanwhile, the S&P actually fell last week by 3.4 points to 3,244. The market's average daily turnover of last week declined 45% week on week to 1.2 billion rupees per day. We saw this weak sentiment trickling down into today's market as well, which is Monday's market, with the market ending with a turnover of 650 million daily turnover. We believe that the reason why the market is having such weak sentiment as of right now is because it's anticipating that the government will fall short of its fiscal targets by around 400 billion rupees. Given this shortfall, the market is also anticipating that certain tax reforms will come into place with the budget that is to be announced within this year. Another reason that we believe the market has this weak sentiment is because it's looking for a catalyst event to drive the market in the medium term. We expect that this catalyst event would be the reduction in the interest rates that would be announced by CBSL. Once this does come into fruition, we do believe that the market will be able to start moving upwards once again. Looking at the T-bill auctions last week, we saw that the 3-month bill yields fell down by 30 basis points last week, primarily because the EPF confirmed its participation in the DDO along with the settlement of the eligible treasury bonds last week. From a T-bond perspective, we saw that the auction that was held on the 12th of September, which offered 90 billion rupees, there was around 244 billion bids coming in, bids that were received for this auction, and 90 billion were accepted in the auction as well. From a secondary market perspective, the secondary market was liquid for the 3 to 5 year 10-year government instruments, government securities. The most traded instruments were also the 3 and 5 year bonds last week as well, and they saw a decline of around 100 to 150 basis points within last week. Looking at the global market, the Nasdaq actually fell 53 basis points last week amidst a 4% increase in oil prices globally.
Let's now look at how the rupee traded against other major currencies during the day, after which we take a short break and I'll be back with more news. Welcome back. Sri Lanka's Commercial Bank of Ceylon wins the title of Leading Partner Bank of Asian Development Bank at the ADB Trade and Supply Chain Finance Program Awards 2023. Meanwhile, the Embassy of Sri Lanka in Berlin opened a platform for Sri Lankan companies to showcase their products with export potential and connect them with potential buyers and investors in Europe. With that, let's take a look at the corporate news for the day. Sri Lanka's Commercial Bank of Ceylon has been declared the Asian Development Bank's leading partner bank in Sri Lanka for trade and finance. Sri Lanka's Commercial Bank of Ceylon has been declared the Asian Development Bank's leading partner bank in Sri Lanka for trade and finance transactions for the third time at the ADB Trade and Supply Chain Finance Program Awards that is being held to recognize the contributions of leading partner banks to trade in Asia and the Pacific. The award was presented to Commercial Bank for recording, with the ADB's assistance, the highest number of transactions in Sri Lanka's trade and supply chain finance domain between the 1st of July 2022 and the 30th of June 2023. An event held at the Embassy of Sri Lanka in Berlin on the 8th of September provided a platform for 10 Sri Lankan companies to showcase their organic agriculture products with export potential and connect them with potential buyers and investors in Europe. Implemented as part of the support to small and medium enterprises in the Organic Agriculture Sector program, jointly co-financed by the European Union and the General Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, the Flavors of Sri Lanka event was a collaboration between GIZ Sri Lanka, the Embassy of Sri Lanka in Berlin, and the Sri Lanka Export Development Board. Meanwhile, the Sri Lanka Tokyo Cement Company in a statement said that 26.73 million ordinary voting shares and 13.365 million ordinary non-voting shares of the company have been listed in the Colombo Stock Exchange. The shares were listed officially at the CSE with effect from the 18th of September 2023, pursuant to a capitalization of reserves in the proportion of a 1:10 ratio. In oil news, global oil benchmark Brent crude neared $95 a barrel today, with investors focused on the prospect of a widening supply deficits in the fourth quarter after Saudi Arabia and Russia extended supply cuts. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia and Russia this month agreed to continue their joint supply cutbacks of 1.3 million barrels per day through to the end of this year. Brent crude futures rose 62 cents to $94.55, while US West Texas Intermediate crude futures was up 72 cents at $91.49. Brent and WTI have climbed for 3 consecutive weeks to touch their highest since November and are on track for their biggest quarterly increases since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in the first quarter of 2022. Saudi Arabia and Russia this month extended a combined 1.3 million barrels per day of supply cuts to the end of the year. In a statement, it was said that these curbs could push the market into a 2 million barrels per day deficit in the fourth quarter, and a subsequent drawdown in inventories could leave the market exposed to further price spikes in 2024. China, considered the engine of oil demand growth, is a key risk because of its sluggish post-pandemic economic recovery, though its oil imports have remained robust. A series of stimulus measures and a summer travel boom helped industrial output and consumer spending to rebound last month, and Chinese refineries ramped up output driven by strong export margins. That's all the news I have for you today. I'll see you again tomorrow at the same time on Sri Lanka's premier news channel, AdaDerana's English First at 9. For now, this is Jonathan Benedict wishing you a good night and a blessed Tuesday ahead.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit adaderana.lk.